Hello, and welcome to the Industrial Energy Efficiency Playbook webinar. I am Heather Clancy, Editorial Director for GreenBiz. I'm a longtime business journalist focused on climate tech and corporate sustainability, and I am thrilled to be your moderator today. Energy efficiency is one of my favorite topics because the investments appeal to my inner pragmatist. For me, it's clear that the clean energy transition requires more investments both in measures to reduce consumption and in the expansion of new capacity. It's the supply and demand dynamics that are fundamental to the economics of every market. And energy efficiency is all about reducing demand. Consider this statistic often quoted by researcher Amory Lovins, co founder of the well regarded Rocky Mountain Institute. Since 1975, the cumulative energy saved by reduced intensity is 30 times the cumulative extra supply from doubling renewable energy output. Let that sink in a moment. Since 1975, the cumulative energy saved by reduced intensity is 30 times greater than the cumulative extra supply from doubling renewable energy output. That is really powerful. And it really speaks to why energy efficiency is so important. Today's focus is on industrial energy efficiency, reducing the power consumption of everyday business processes. It's a measure that can also have considerable cost benefits, which I am sure everyone here can appreciate. The focus comes at an important moment. The events of 2022, with unprecedented fuel supply disruptions and heightened scrutiny of corporate net zero plans, have made it clear that acting quickly is an urgent priority. And more organizations are starting to do just exactly that. Early this month, the International Energy Agency reported that investments in efficiency measures such as building renovations, public transportation, and electric vehicle infrastructure reached $560 billion this year, which was up 16% from 2021. One of our speakers will dive much more into detail on the state of the market in a moment, but much of our discussion today will really center on the practical steps that business leaders can take to deepen their commitment to industrial energy efficiency and realize reductions in both costs and emissions. We'll cover key drivers and inhibitors, critical success factors, and the role of digitalization. The measures we'll discuss are outlined in the Industrial Energy Efficiency Playbook, which was published in late November. I have downloaded it for myself, and you definitely should, and I'm sure you will by the end of this webinar. The materials were developed by ABB and the The materials were developed by ABB and the Energy Efficiency Movement, which is a group of technology companies, academics, public decision makers, and other stakeholders, all focused on advocating the benefits of energy efficiency. In this webcast, you'll hear from 4 experts on this topic. Morten Vierrod, President of Electrification with ABB. Kevin Lane, Senior Program Manager with the International Energy Agency. Eero Ahola, Professor of Energy Efficiency in Electricity-Driven Systems with LUT University in Finland. And Julian Genetier, Vice President of Energy Division for Alfa Laval. Welcome to all of you, and thanks today for sharing your time and expertise. I'll guide a panel discussion for about 40 minutes, followed by a Q&A in which you'll be able to ask questions, so be sure to submit them. But first, I'll hand it over to Kevin Lane from the IEA for a brief overview of the new IEA report on energy efficiency. Kevin, the microphone is yours.
Thank you, Heather, and thank you for the introduction and also for the invitation to be here today. So it's a pleasure to be here to join you, and especially to see your playbook launched just a few weeks ago. So it's great to see that document come out. By way of introduction, I'd just like to briefly tell you about our energy efficiency market report, which came out 2 weeks ago. And this is basically a summary or a status of what we think is happening in energy efficiency over the previous 12 months or so. So as you can imagine, it's basically couched in terms of the energy crisis at the moment. So as we saw from February 2022, after the invasion of Ukraine from Russia, we saw energy prices dramatically increasing, and that's had a dramatic effect on both energy prices in Europe, but also around the world, as well as inflationary pressures and pressures on commodities such as copper and silicon chips and the like. So we've seen a very, well, maybe it's the first truly global energy crisis, so much more complex than the one in the 1970s. So the main report of the IEA was basically showing a lot of the data that we have, and a lot of that is around energy consumption around the world. And what we see is after the fall in energy consumption in 2020, there was a major rebound in 2021, about 5% globally. So a dramatic increase, maybe one of the biggest over the last 50 years. There's only once or twice it's been that large. So this has had quite a large impact on our investment and our energy systems. And we see in 2022, it's probably ameliorated a little bit, so maybe not quite as large due to high energy prices and other action that governments are taking at the moment. In terms of our headline indicator for energy efficiency, the common one we use is something called energy intensity. It's just how much energy do we need to produce 1 unit of GDP. And we try to see how that improves over time. So in 2022, we think it's about a 2% improvement in energy intensity, which is quite a good increase following the previous years where it was about 0.5%, so really quite low. So this could be an increasing efficiency that we are seeing. However, there's probably two things to be aware of. One is that with high energy prices, some of this has come from a reduction in user behavior. So there may well be people with colder homes not being able to have the services they wish. And also within industry, there could be some demand destruction going on as well, that some industries haven't been able to do as much as they could otherwise have done with these high energy prices. But in terms of intensity, that's quite a good figure that we see. And we also see this improvement in industry as well, perhaps the greater improvement in the lighter or less energy intensive industries across the world. In terms of investment, that's one of the other things that we look at. Heather's already mentioned this year was probably a good year, or last year was a good year. 560 billion is quite a good increase over the previous years. But this is mainly driven by electric vehicles. It's probably quite a high one. And you'll see that maybe 1 in 8 cars sold around the world are now electric. So that's a very good sign. And that follows on from last year where we saw a bigger increase in buildings happening. So the KfW program in Germany, say, drove a lot of investment in terms of energy efficiency in buildings. So we haven't seen the great increases in industry yet. One of the other good news stories, as well as electric vehicles, is heat pumps. So this year we see heat pumps in Europe, about 3 million being sold. So that's about 30% increase this year, following a 30% the previous year. So it's actually very good news in terms of that part of the sector. And in general, we also see some other good news is if we look at government spending post the recovery in 2020, following COVID, maybe about $1 trillion have been mobilized globally, and nearly 2/3 of that is going to energy efficiency. So energy efficiency seen as a way to very quickly roll out money. The projects are very quick to realize impact. The other part we do in this market report is also track policy. So we have a good section in terms of what are the latest policies going on. So we do say, for example, that there are several governments have introduced energy efficiency plans, which is good news. We see other parts of regulations increasing as well. So we do see, minimum energy performance standards, which drive investment for, say, motors in some countries. There's now over 100 countries using these types of programs. And we see building codes being extended as well. So there's a good section on policy in that report as well. But I'd boil it down to that the main messages, if you're reading this report, is probably 3 things. That energy efficiency is really key in terms of energy savings, in terms of affordability for consumers, in terms of climate for carbon reduction, and also energy security. And I'll just pull out 3 figures. One is over the last 20 years, if you look at all the energy efficiency that's happened, that's now saving $680 billion a year just in reduced energy bills in IEA countries alone. So it's much bigger on a global scale. And if we look at CO2 emissions since 2000, we're probably 8 gigatons lower than they would have been if it wasn't for efficiency. And that's out of energy-related emissions of about, say, 33 at the moment. So it's a very big chunk that efficiency is delivering. And finally, the other one, I guess, is on energy imports as well. And that's really well highlighted with another report that came out yesterday, looking at Europe and how we can reduce gas consumption over the next few years to make sure Europe has enough gas. And that one, efficiency, came out as the key measure if we're going to have enough gas to get through the winter of 23, 24. So really, efficiency is key on lots of fronts, and it's never been more important. And it's probably realised now, and I think there's a political will as well to do more in this space. And I'll hand back to you.
Great, thank you. It does seem like we're at a turning point for this movement. Why do you call it that? I know the report actually explicitly says that this is the time. Why is that?
That's a good question, and we thought it was going to be higher when we were looking at the early indicators for the numbers. So it was not quite as high as we expected because GDP was being downgraded through the year, and energy
Hmm.
consumption is a bit higher than we expected. But 2% is still a good figure. It's still
Mm.
halfway to what we need for the net zero scenario. So if we're going to meet a net zero emissions by 2050, we really need to be improving at about 4% per annum up to 2030. So it still needs a lot more to go. However, some of those investments that we're seeing this year, so we've seen a lot of money being spent, the Repower EU within Europe, the Inflation Reduction Act in the US, or even in Japan with its green transformation, these commitments to funding mean we probably have about 3% improvement as likely just from all of these investments in the pipeline. So on 1 year's figure, it's not much to go on, but actually with some of these changes in government spending and actions, there's probably an increase starting to happen. And I'll give one more example. As we had a conference earlier this year, our 7th annual global conference, and for energy efficiency, we managed to have 27 ministers from around the world to go there. And that's, I think, the first time we've got so many ministers just looking at energy efficiency at one particular topic. So that was a really good positive sign for energy efficiency. And we hope to repeat that again this year in Paris in June. So I think everyone's welcome to come there too.
Got it. Got it.
Hopefully,
So this is the moment. This is the moment. We have a lot of ideas of how to do it in the new Industrial Energy Efficiency Playbook that was published a couple weeks ago by the Energy Efficiency Movement. Morten, this is your moment. Tell us a little bit more about the movement itself and its work. What inspired ABB to really focus on creating this community? To start with that, and then share some of the key insights that we're going to find in the playbook.
Right. No, thanks, Heather. It was ABB. We have always been very committed to energy efficiency and how we can create both a more stable energy grid, but also how we can save more energy. But it's, as always, it's a limit for what you can do alone and how much more you can do when you come together. And that was the whole starting point of the energy efficiency movement. It's a global forum for as an organization to share ideas, best practices, and common good practices around energy efficiency. So we launched it last year in March, and Alpha Laval and Julianne joining us also here on the call, as Alpha Laval, the first joiner. But today, together, we are more than 200 organizations joining the energy efficiency movement, and really across the globe, starting in Europe and now also covering Asia and also America. So, but really, why we started it was to get more focus on energy efficiency, and with in the backdrop in March last year, very around climate change and all the commitment also from industrial companies around sustainability targets for 2030 and coming up with simple ways to reach those. Of course, since then also we had the war in Ukraine, and so that means the whole energy market in Europe has also changed a lot, which with the challenges now with energy and grid stability and the cost of energy. So that is kind of added to it. So energy efficiency, it's not an if anymore, it's really a must. And that's what we see also across the globe. So the need to reduce stress on the grid, but also how we can use this as part of running our business. So for the playbook, about the 10 actions that companies can use in industries to save energy, because I'm not sure if everybody is aware, but about 42% of the total electricity demand today sits in the energy industry space. So that is why we also have to make changes there. And the commitment, I will also see now, we see with all our sustainability targets and the commitment from industries is absolutely there So it's all about what are the right actions to take. So we were trying here to come up across industries, and this is not just from ABB, it's from, you will see there, from many partners in the industry, what would be the best way to go along. So we tried to be more of the, like on the private or the consumer levels, where we talk about how to cut your own energy bill, that we should think the same way here on the industrial side. So it's more of a 10 actions to take for industry, and starting with from energy audits and right sizing machinery and equipment that you have in your plants, electrifying your fleets, switching from gas boilers to heat pumps that Julian will talk more about, but also how we need to move data from on-site servers and up on the cloud. That also can be a significant energy saving. So these are just a few actions to take. So we really made it more of a shopping list where it's not one size fits all, but it's really about these are possible actions to take. And as always, you should take the one first, which has the biggest impact and that you can save the most energy. So that's how we really have gone about around our energy efficiency movement, and also how the playbook came along.
Great. Thank you for the setup there. I appreciate it. And I think one of the things, and you just alluded to it a moment ago, is that one of the things that is really clear is that these actions, these solutions, have really reached a level of maturity and materiality in how they can reduce emissions today. These are not things that we have to wait for. They're not science fiction. They're very tangible. So, Eero, are we reaching an inflection point in terms of the technology that's really available for greater industrial energy efficiency? Like, why would you not do this?
Yes, I definitely agree. We are reaching that one, and I can say that that there are several reasons for this. For you, as Europeans, we can see that this energy price is going up because of war in Ukraine, and it's also very variable. So, I mean, it depends on when you are using it. So not only how much you are using, but when you are using it. And at the same time, we have energy transition going on, which practically means electrification. It means and which when it's based mostly on solar and wind, it will finally end up as being the least cost energy source. And this means that you electrify everything that you can, and electrification is usually also the most efficient way to make the product. And so, yes, I really think.
Are there any specific things that you would point to as a first step? I mean, I guess it really depends on the organization, but where is there a logical starting point?
Yes. In sense of savings, if you think about the industry, of most feasible and the most big first starting point is, of course, the measurements. You have to know where you are, and you have to know also what are the right metrics. I mean that usually we are talking about efficiency, but efficiency itself doesn't describe anything. It means practically we should ask how much we use energy for making certain product, or for example, moving liquid or air or compressing air or so on. That's the most feasible way. And then you see what you can reach. You have to think about that. And then after that, you have to have the methods to do it. And what are the tools? And for example, frequency converters, they are already quite cheap. You can apply them in most industrial cases.
Great. So, Julian, I didn't realize that Alpha Laval was the first joiner. So kudos to you on that. Help us understand the obstacles and the blockers to the progress that we have here. Like, so we just talked about the need for measurement. You're working with companies and customers all around the world to help drive down energy bills and draw down their emissions. What are you hearing from organizations about the barriers that they face when it comes to energy efficiency? What can we learn from this?
Yeah, thanks, Either. And Morten mentioned it, you repeated that we were the first joiner. And 1 year ago, when we joined, just before COP26 in Glasgow, what we were saying is that the technology were available. And we were wondering how do we get to a faster adoption and a faster scalability and deployment of those technologies. It's not about the development of new technology like we have in the new energy sector of hydrogen and renewable. It is about deployment of existing technologies. If Kevin mentioned some example in transportation and some example in housing, heating. When it comes to industry, that's where government's actions are the least developed and probably maybe also the less desired by the industry itself. It comes from the very diverse processes. So each company, each industry needs to define what works best for their specific use case. So beyond what Jero was saying about the metrics and start measuring, which applies to everyone, it's about moving from theoretical example to practical example, and that's what the playbook is about.
Hmm.
And I think it's one attempt by the energy efficiency movement to show some practical example, and that's a first step. Training and educating engineers in order for them to start to map, measure, and find energy efficiency opportunities is the next step for the industry to embrace to foster energy efficiency. And with the economic pressure on the price and the commitment on decarbonization, the environment to address demand is really there. So we gave some practical example in the playbook. Morten listed some. Jero mentioned the frequency converter. At Alfa
Hmm.
Laval, we look at it. We have our expertise on the heat side, which is the other side of energy, or the other form of energy. And we gave practical example as easy as just cleaning your equipment. If you clean a heat exchanger, you get a better energy efficiency out of a heat exchanger. And actually 2.5% of the CO2 emission could be saved in the world if all heat exchangers will be operating clean. And then after that, it's about right sizing of your equipment. It's about increasing the performance of equipment, take more efficient equipment. There are standard in motors, there are standard in heat exchangers to get higher efficiency. And as an ultimate result, it will be about finding also heat reuse. So if you find excess energy, how can you reuse it in other processes? It might be in the plant for an industry, or it can be also reselling to another users like a district energy network, if there's
Hmm.
one close.
Hmm. Hmm. Great. I think we're going to come back to that a little bit more in a moment, and I'm sure maybe there will be questions regarding that as well. But let's go to another an area here that Kevin, in particular, your new research suggests that some of the biggest opportunities for energy efficiency lie in emerging markets. What are the keys to unlocking greater energy efficiency there in those industrial sectors? Oh, you're muted again.
Good question, and perhaps not unsurprising that there's opportunities in emerging and developing economies as well. So they're a much larger proportion of the world's population, but also increasingly a larger part of the
Mm.
GDP as well. As they become wealthier, they will want more services and also produce more service and equipment globally as well. In terms of the industrial sector, where we see that there are very short-term, relatively easy wins, you do see that in the lighter industries, whether that's motor-driven systems, electrification, are clear areas where you can get some very low cost and very quick energy efficiency improvements. The ones in the heavy industries like steel and the like, they will take longer-term solutions, will take more time to develop. But within those lighter industries, the opportunities are fairly clear, and it's from my perspective, or from the IEAs where we serve our member governments, it's the governments who have to see what sort type of regulations or policies or how they can support industry to implement some of these. So some of them are more straightforward once we're down at the equipment level to try and raise standards on whether it's pumps or motors, fans, those sorts of end-use equipment are easier to drive standards that will then suck in investment to try and deliver those more efficient products. The other ones are more problematic in terms of systems, how we provide the right conditions. So there might be options like having more level playing fields so that we don't subsidize fossil fuels, which undercuts one of the benefits of energy efficiency. So using those subsidies more for promoting efficiency is probably a better longer term solution. And then all of these should be couched in some sort of longer term goals so that the emerging economies do have some pathway, they know which way the industry is going or society is going in terms of energy efficiency, but other wider goals. And I think I'll hand it back to you, Heather.
Great, thanks. So, Morten, digitalization. It's really clear that that is going to be a major contributor to energy efficiency and helping drive it. The new playbook calls for organizations to, quote, bring connectivity to physical assets, quote, end quote, and to move data to the cloud. So, what are some of the opportunities and no regret moves that industrial organizations should prioritize in terms of industrial Internet of Things implementations? Where can they start with that?
Yeah. No, the digitalization and connectivity is today part of the global megatrend in the same way as electrification is today. So, and what we will see, and we're starting to see it already, is that all assets, all equipment in a factory or in an industry will be connected either to the edge, I mean, locally, or up on the cloud. And the whole point of getting things connected is to all about transparency. It's to get to understand where is energy used, because then we can also understand where energy can be saved. So it's for better decision making. So the whole thing here around smart, we talk about smart, safe, and sustainable electrification. And the smartness there is kind of using data and data-driven decisions, because I believe everything, we see the trend already, everything in the industrial plants will be connected. We see that our challenge as an industry is to make it simple. So it's really plug and play, that everything fits together without a lot of engineering or a lot of cost to get things and equipment connected. And then it's about, as I say, data collection. It's to get those information data on the cloud, so you can use artificial intelligence or machine learning as well. And that is the software and the programs we can use again for making better decisions. So again, coming back, it's about collecting the data, getting transparency, and then making better decisions for how we operate, how we use the energy, but most importantly, then also how we can save energy. That is what IoT and connected devices can help us. So that's what we also highlighted in our playbook that we just launched.
Just a quick follow up on that one. What are the technologies that you really need to have in an organization? Like 5G, is that, how important is that for this movement? Are there things that are coming into play now that are really, enabling this?
Yeah, and that is more the build-up of better connectivity. That be 5G, which means that you can transport and transfer more data to the cloud in a faster and more efficient way than before, and getting the whole network better built and stronger. That is all enablers to make this happening. But you can do this both on edge devices, that means on premise, or you can do cloud connection. The advantage, what we highlighted in our playbook, is also with cloud connection, you're able to, compared to often to a local IT system, you can save a lot of energy, and it enables machine learning and artificial intelligence, which could be again cheaper and a better way of operating plants in the future. So digitalization and electrification, these two trends go really hand in hand when we're also talking about how we can save energy and be more productive in the future.
Mm-hmm. Super. Julian, I want to go back to you. You did get into some of the advantages and ways in which heat exchangers can be re-optimized or rethought in order to improve efficiency. I wonder if we can go into this a little bit more deeply. Talk to me about the incentives that are available to help do this, how this is being mobilized, and also it's not just about heat, it's about cooling too, right? So can you dive into your particular area of expertise a little bit more?
Yeah, sure, Heather. So no, I mentioned on the heat side. So on the heat exchanger, the first pragmatic thing is to look at securing that they are properly maintained and clean. That's the first step. And digitalization is a great enabler for that, because you can, through the right IoT solutions, algorithm, you can predict fouling and detect when it's time to do a cleaning of heat exchangers. So you can really do a performance assessment of your heat exchangers. Then, calling more on expertise, then you will move into the next step, which is securing that the heat exchanger, and that is applicable for any device, that is actually right size for the application. Because from the design phase to the actual usage of the equipment, it might be years and many layers in between, particularly for industries. that have created buffers, and that doesn't make necessarily the equipment particularly suitable to the particular current operating conditions. So there is a possibility to resize, to readjust. It works super well with plate heat exchanger because you can actually remove or add plates if you need it to adapt it to the current duty. And then the last step is to identify more energy savings opportunity by doing a full audit. Here again, the fact that you measure is a very important element, because you should take a very holistic approach and don't try to optimize subsystem, but really optimize it at the plant level. I will add a comment that is not valid only for heat exchangers, but tagging along what Kevin was saying around answering to your question around emerging economies. I think the advantage or the opportunity of the emerging economies is that they don't have to rebuild an existing plant. They don't have to do retrofit. They can actually do it right from the start. And that's a fantastic learnings that we can bring from advanced economies to emerging economies. I think even also in the heavy industry side, just take the learnings and put the best efficiency benchmark and a most efficient process from the start in the emerging economy. That's a fantastic opportunity we have for those economies.
Mm-hmm. So let's stick with that a moment. I'd love to hear a little bit from Morten on that. Are there things that you're seeing there that can help our audience think about that opportunity as well?
Yeah, I think, I mean, in our field, a very practical examples to build on what Julian was saying as well. You have the use of motors in industries today. We are still across the world using outdated technology. And for us being in the industry, very frustrating to see that we have opportunities where they are not taken by the over industrial customers and clients. So that's also what we wanted with the energy efficiency movement, to get more attention around it, because people were maybe thinking that we are up to date when you've made an installation maybe 10 years ago. Today, it can already be outdated and very inefficient. So our challenge is to use the technology available today. Just as a very practical example, electric motors, if we are using today so many what we called IE1 and 2, which is the lowest energy efficiency standards for electric motors across industries. If we would apply the new technology today available, we could save 10% of the whole world's electricity consumption just by upgrading. It's about 300 million motor systems around in industries in the world. But that's the opportunity we have at hand by using technology. And we don't need to wait till 2030, or we can do it today. I mean, the technology is available. So it's to do an energy audit and find out, where do I have outdated equipment in my plant? And how can I then find partners like us who can help you to upgrade that facility so you do become more energy efficient in the future?
Super, thank you. Jiro, I asked you before about technologies that are available today to do this. Your organization, your university, is constantly exploring disruptive technologies and new ones that are coming down the road. Help us think about the long term and where we're headed. What are some of the technologies on the horizon you see with the greatest potential for energy efficiency? Things that may not be thought of as an energy efficiency play, but when they come into place, they will help with this.
I'm this sense in a little bit boring, because I say that if you think about long term, you can save most there where we are currently burning fossil fuels. It practically means that if we can electrify something, for example, transportation, which is very low efficiency fossil fuel burning, it has very high potential. On the other hand, if we think about the same of making heat, then it's question about how efficiently you can recirculate heats or upgrade heat in the industrial environment, or replace burning of something fossil fuel by heat pumps in generally. So and then on the other hand, what is very interesting, because I see also that this in industrial energy efficiency sense, is the problem usually is that you cannot just pinpoint one device, because usually it's connected somewhere, it produces somewhere something, and it's, for example, if you think about motor pump system, it's connected to grid, and on the other hand, it's producing flow for the process, need of process. And the problem is that if you move one part and rest is we can in worst case do it that we just transfer losses. And that for this sense we would need this kind of tools that can optimize and design whole process, not just the dimensioning, but also to optimize the control at the same time, because they are not independent. That is what would give, in my opinion, quite much benefit.
Gosh, super. Thank you for your insights. I'm going to take a few questions from the audience now. We've got some coming in, so I'm going to randomly put them out to individuals. But if someone wants to kick in and add something, please feel free. Just kind of indicate that you're going to do so. Kevin, I'm going to start with you. With buildings and construction consuming as much as 30% of the world's energy and generating nearly 40% of global CO2 emissions, no meaningful plan to address climate change can ignore the central challenges presented by the built environment. Logical. Happy to see one of the actions in the playbook is smart buildings. What do we need to do to move faster in that area? Kevin, I'll start with you. Kevin.
Quite right. So buildings
There you go.
are one of the key components. So with industry, buildings and transport are the three main components we generally look at. But in terms of buildings, in terms of those, we usually, as well, from the government's perspective, again, usually we have three levers that we generally pull, as well as the long-term planning to say where we'd like our buildings to become. We have building codes are one way that we do that. Information, whether that's through information on your buildings or rebates, how to try and retrofit your buildings. But for the built environment, we've got a real challenge, is that although we can do some new buildings very well, but at not much additional cost to retrofit, our existing buildings will be more of a challenge. They will cost more, and we will need more building new business models to understand how we can retrofit a lot of those. But in terms of new buildings in most of the world, that's quite straightforward to do. Our challenge is the retrofit of bigger ones, and that will take some funding to do that.
Got it. Any other takers on that one? Martin?
Yeah, maybe I can just comment. There are even on the brownfield, or as you say, the existing buildings that we have. Even there, it applies a lot of the same, what we looked at our industrial playbook. You can use a lot of the same measures here on buildings. That be starting again with an energy audit, finding out where is energy being spent in the building, and a big portion or kind of one of the biggest, let's say, spenders of energy in a building is normally our HVAC system, the heating, ventilation, air condition. And starting there to see that you have the right equipment on the HVAC side can make significant savings on energy efficiency in buildings. So that would be a starting point, but also looking at the building automation, lighting controls today. But that is and then lastly also, we see more and more now with higher energy prices, we're looking at more renewable, the greener building, putting solar panels up on the roof, and even battery storage systems down in the basement. These are all, and battery system mostly being used for load shedding or peak shaving. That is, and with all this, you can make a significant saving in a building. So a lot of the practices being also talked about in the industrial playbook is as valid in any commercial or even private building.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. This one is for Julian. The playbook is quite focused on actions organizations can take. What about public policy? What do we need more of or less of?
Yeah, I think I was already hinting earlier that in the industry, that's probably where, compared to transportation and building, that's probably where the government actions are the least developed and maybe the least desired. But there's still opportunity is to foster training and educating engineers and company staff, supporting sector coupling to connect producer of waste heat with potential customer, support the development of energy intensity benchmark by industry. The IEA is really promoting that as part of energy policies to support energy efficiency, and and also offering some attractive credit lines, I believe, for energy efficiency investments. Even though energy efficiency investment are usually very good payback, he would not hurt to support with some credit lines here from the government. So those could be some supporting actions that governments could drive to support energy efficiency in the industry.
Got it. Have a really specific one here for you, Euro. How much percentage energy savings can be achieved by installing frequency converters?
It's probably depends on case. I mean that for example, if you can get rid of throttle valve in pumping, it might be 20-30% or even more. And one thing that people either don't understand is that even though you don't need frequency converter, you can fix the over dimensioning by frequency converter by running constant speed. So it's very cost efficient way because you don't have to change the motor, you don't have to change the pump, you don't have to change the piping. You can just adjust a little bit, for example, throttle valve. So I think that it's very good way, but you have to be able to show the benefits and measure first, and that's the problem. And of course, there are many industries because the electricity use is not their main process. So they are very risk scarce. They don't want to take additional risk, and that's quite big problem.
Okay, great. Some really good ones come in here. I'm going to throw this one out to Morten first, but I think anyone else is welcome to answer this. Cybersecurity. So that's a top of mind concept for pretty much every company. And one of the key actions recommended in the playbook is moving data to the cloud. What are the critical success factors in getting that right and making sure that data is protected? Morten.
Yeah. No, thanks. I mean, cybersecurity, as we all know, this is very critical and becomes more and more critical. And I think the main part is also, I mean, to work with the right partners that can help you when we're doing this with moving data to the cloud. But we also have to remember there that today we are all connected. Even when you're not cloud, you have it data center on premise, which is also connected. And sometimes so I would also recommend to do a holistic cybersecurity assessment. Sometimes we believe that it's more risky putting things on the cloud, but facts kind of shows us that it's more risky to keeping data on premise on your own kind of homemade system. So teaming up with the best in the industry also here with cybersecurity experts and also even with cloud solutions, we know that is most of the times even more secure than having a homemade on-premise cybersecurity and a homemade system. So, but as always, team up with the experts in the industry who can help you to this to be taken care of in the right way. That's because this is as important as of course securing your physical assets that you have with your gate security. You need also your data security because the damages is at least on the potentially on the same level.
Any other takers? Okay. This one is going to come to Julian. To move fast and achieve scale, we need to make it easy for the industrial workforce to implement and adopt these technologies. Where should managers be focused in terms of empowering their employees? Maybe training and
I
new
think
concepts.
the empowerment exactly. I would repeat myself. I think the empowerment comes a lot by supporting them, by giving them the right training, the right education. Also, the opportunity to benchmark, to look at best practices from peers and other companies, enabling them to go and visit installations from peers that have implemented energy efficiency measures already. I think that's the empowerment part, and then the accountability comes. If you measure it, then you will see the benefit. You will measure it very quickly and realize how quick how the payback.
Got it. This is kind of, it's not the same exact question, but it's related because when large companies make commitments of this nature, it naturally affects their entire supply chain, their value chain network. So how can suppliers adapt themselves to targets of companies like ABB or Alfa Laval? Like, so how do the suppliers of a large organization that's investing in industrial energy efficiency, how do they play the game and work alongside and align? So Morten, can we start with you? And I'd love other thoughts on this as well.
Absolutely. Now, just give a practical example for ABB and how we work on the topic. We have said in our sustainability commitments for 2030 that we will make our own operations carbon neutral. And that is a lot of the measures what we are now, you will find in the industry playbook, are measures we have taken already in all of our sites across ABB. And that's how we already will get to that carbon neutrality. And then the next step is then working with our suppliers, helping them to save energy as well, and greenhouse gas emissions as one example. So, and here comes again the energy efficiency movement in play. It's about collecting all these best practices, sharing them in the community with our suppliers so they can apply the same. Because it's not just about asking or demanding our suppliers to become carbon neutral to remain a supplier to ABB. It's also to helping them as a team play to be able to do it. So we have a clear expectation about carbon neutral operations at all our suppliers, but it's not just the whip, it's also the carrot of to say we're going to help you to get there, and it is even a business case to do so. It's a future license to operate, but it's a more productive way of manufacturing. If you can use energy and you can produce and manufacture in a better way as a supplier. So we try here really to do it as a team play, sharing all these best practices, and the playbook is one as one step, but there will be more coming also, so we are able to decarbonize the whole supply chain for our company. But I know that is also common across industry. That is what we all need to do. If you are a supplier or a customer or a manufacturer today, we all need to decarbonize our supply chain and our operations. So therefore we need to share the practices and learn from each other what works best.
Julian, anything you want to add?
No, we have the same target as ABB. We have a commitment to be carbon neutral by 2030. So it's zero emission on scope 1 and 2, and then 50% on scope 3. So it is about working in collaboration with our suppliers to address. And as Morten was saying, we are all in the same boat. So we have to help each other to reach those targets, because some of them are easy, but not all of them. So they will require a collaboration, a strong collaboration to reach those targets. So and one should say that we are of ABB and we have invited quite a number of our suppliers to join the movement as well. We get them onto the movement and contributing in that way, getting access to best practices. I mentioned one of the way to empower is to get best practices. Maybe it's an opportunity to promote the energy efficiency movement website, where in these pages you start to find quite a number, and we are looking at populating even more a number of best practices and good case stories of example of industries, buildings, or even in the field of transportation, of areas or a practical example where these technologies have been put in play.
Yeah. Super. This is a question that harkens back to my comments about supply and demand at the beginning. It's for Kevin. I'll give Kevin this one first. Do we need a holistic approach that combines both? So you have many corporations that are working on renewable energy plans and energy efficiency plans, maybe some just working on one or the other. Does it make sense to pursue either of these strategies in isolation if you are a big industrial company? How can you think about this more holistically? Kevin.
So I'll give a brief answer, but I suspect my colleagues in the actual industry will have a stronger view. They clearly have to do it. So, but yes, of course, it would make sense to look at all the different options. You see some companies can take a very easy route out and just purchase all green electricity to have to meet their net zero goals. But of course, as a society, it needs to be a bit more than that. And I think, we need to share that out a little bit more. And without efficiency in there as a society, we aren't going to realize net zero goals. So we need to maximize our efficiency potential across all sectors, but also in industry as well. So I think there are some big opportunities in industry, and those have to be realised if we're going to meet net zero goals. And how you share that amongst the other ones, whether that's more renewables or other aspects, I think that's maybe one of the companies will say how they do that divvying up or how they divide it.
And Kevin, I fully agree with you. This is not an either renewables or energy efficiency. This is it's and you have to do both because all about and often the attention we want on energy efficiency is think about all the new renewable energy you can rather replace, use for replacing brown coal power generation as an example. If you reduce your energy consumption, driving energy efficiency measures, you can rather use that extra installed power to replace fossil fuels instead of running inefficient machinery in plants. So for us, this is we're promoting strongly that we need to invest in the renewable energy, and as you see there, both ourselves, but also our suppliers, but also our customers are making significant investment in renewable. In that, be solar panels on roofs or our parking lots. That, as an example, we have in ABB, and that is just comes in addition, of course, to all the energy efficiency measures we're taking. So it's definitely not either or, it's both.
Okay.
Well, I can only echo that. It's in the new energy sector, as we call it, there are things that are already available, wind, solar. There are things to be invented at scale, like hydrogen, e-fuel. In the hard to abate sector, there are some challenge where we have to invest in new technology to make that available. And we are doing that and supporting that very much to really decarbonize fully the supply. But we need to look at the same time at the demand and supply in equal with the same effort. It's not the same maybe timing of it. Some are more deployment of existing technologies, some are more development of new technologies. But it is very much a double-sided approach that we have to have here and really push both at the same time, both supply and demand.
Thinking about this slightly differently in terms of energy security and the shift to renewables, I mean, we know that it's made serious challenges on the grid for industrial companies. So how can energy efficiency really help improve the stability and resilience of electricity supply and ease that burden? Euro, I bet you have some thoughts on that.
Yes, of course, when you have smaller demand of energy, well, that's help immediately. But the other aspect here is that in addition to efficiency, we should be able to add flexibility, because it also reduces the cost and also emissions. So it's no-brainer solution. So they are not separate things, but you have to do both ones. So add storage this way or another in the industrial production system.
Okay. Switching gears here, we have a very specific question. How often should energy efficiency audits be conducted? At the beginning, but then how frequently? What's a good practice? Morten.
Yeah, no, I think it depends, of course, how new it is. I mean, we want to be a partner on a complete new build project. That is where it needs to be done, that we design the right equipment into new factories or in industries day one. So we don't start being out of kind of out of scope from day one. So that is the first step. But then it's very much around, if you look now, I used the example earlier, a 10-year manufacturing unit or a factory, many cases it will already be outdated. There is a lot of technology shifts that have happened during the last 10 years. So I think you will have going through, and you always find also new things when you're looking at equipment. And so I think this is probably every 5 year would be maybe as a starting point, but it depends what's the age. The older and equipment you have in house, the more important and the bigger savings I can guarantee you will find. So let's say that's the higher the older the equipment, the higher the urgency. That would be the short advice.
Any other thoughts on that one? Additions?
Yeah,
Does that speak?
I would sorry.
Please,
I
Euro,
would
go right ahead.
agree that this, but of course the ultimate goal or objective should be that we have online. I mean that it's real-time energy efficiency measurement in way or another.
Okay, I like that one.
And
Is that Julian who was? Yeah.
Yeah, I could add also that for the audits, I mean, there are also specialists in these fields. So there are consulting companies, there are energy saving companies, so-called ESCOs, that are doing that, all year round as a business, of course, and then they are able to help bring best practices and benchmarks and audits in a very quick manner. But I agree with Jero. The ultimate goal, if we can have continuous monitoring and measuring, that's really the best, because then you can also adjust to seasonal conditions and variations where that can affect the performance of your plants.
Got it. Great. All right. So I'd like to ask each of you for one final thought, like one really critical point that you feel the folks here, the industrial leaders here on this webcast, need to really bear in mind in pursuit of energy efficiency. What's the action that we can take to move things up a gear and really speed progress? Concentrate on one thing from each of you. Please, Kevin, I'm going to toss the ball over to you first.
Okay, my quick answer is going to be, well, read the playbook. That will be a very good first action to do. But if I was to pick on one, it would be just to expand on energy audits and maybe install some real-time monitoring. I think that will give you the benefits of understanding what's going on, allowing you to do more analytics, preventative maintenance, all the way through to better analysis and then control, and maybe starting to enjoy the benefits of digitalization for your company, but then also the wider grid.
Great. Jero, over to you next.
Yes, I would say one thing that is not discussed here. It's co-benefits of energy efficiency, and I think that in many cases it might be such a way that it actually the saved energy as a sum is less than the co-benefits of the energy efficient action. For example, in sense of maintenance work or in sense of investments elsewhere. So we need to highlight this also.
The money. Got it. The money and the maintenance. Julian.
Yeah, I would re-insist on the training and the education of engineers and company staff in energy efficiency audits and identifying energy opportunities. So the capital allocation that you make will be wisely used by properly trained engineers. And on a side note, if you clean your heat exchangers as well, that's a good thing. It's quite simple and can help you to pass the winter with a lower energy bill.
And you'll be warm too. Morten, bring it home.
No, thanks. Yeah. So the final addition would, from my side, in addition to what our team members here have highlighted, would be for me would be use technology, because the technology is available today, and be curious to find out how can we do things in a better way by using the latest technology and to upgrade the assets that I have. Or if you're in front of building something new, let's take the highest energy efficiency opportunity that we have today, because I think a lot of people will be surprised of how much have happened on this front over the last years.
Great. Thank you all for your final thoughts. And also thank you for giving us your time and sharing your expertise with us today. So Jero, Julian, Kevin, and Morten, thank you so much on behalf of myself and our audience. I also want to remind you that you need to download that playbook. I'm going to verbalize the URL for you, join.energyefficiencymovement.com. Again, that's join.energyefficiencymovement.com. Get it now. And with that, I will bid you adieu And thank you so much from my studio here in Northern New Jersey. I'm Heather Clancy, and I wish you all a wonderful, productive, and safe day.